Hi, buddy. It's Jeff, Jeff Allen here. Sorry, I got a little bit of cough and kind of bronchitis, and so I still got a bit of cough. Doctors give me some medicine, but if I don't do this, I'm going to forget this idea that's been, came up again today, and it's been on my mind. But it actually came up today, and I want to deal with it. Um, so 2 weeks ago, after a couple of encounters with a director at a restaurant about me spending time at the restaurant consuming food even twice a day and kind of make it like my second office, told me not to do it and stuff. I put in a video on YouTube, which I put in my LinkedIn profile, which got 2,000 views in a couple of days. And so, it was about the director, and that isn't really a way to do things, right? So you don't tell people they can't come and consume food just because they're doing, listen to things on their computer all day or whatever, if they're consuming food, right? So it was a chain restaurant. And so the director came up and we had a discussion and we dealt with it, right? Don't really have, we didn't come to a convergence of opinions, but I figure out I'd spend half days there and that's it, right? We don't go for a full day. But then one of the employees came up to me, and I've been eating at this restaurant a lot over the past 2 years, right? And the employee came up to me and says, "You shouldn't have done that. That was inappropriate. You're going to put us out of a job." And this is really interesting. So Pascal Baudry, I'm going to tag you on this because I've been citing you in my book here. I've been making this, I sent you my article from Multilingual Magazine about 15 years ago before it got published, and I really want to thank you. That was great. Then you sent me your book, right? French and Americans, The Other Shore in French. And then this year I've made a new audio or a video book of this, working with the French. But I made it working with the Germans, working with the Americans, working with the Chinese, making a lot of videos here on my YouTube channel. And I cite you, Pascal Baudry, a lot. It's like you said, cross validation, right? And then, so I've been thinking about this. I cite you a lot, not just in the videos, but actually in general, because I talk to the French about the French, right? And mention what you say about the verticality, or kind of the vertical nature of the professional services and retail and all that on page 125 of your book, right? And then I also mentioned the other one that's in your book, which is actually a couple pages earlier, about the whole, figure 5 in the book on page 123 of, the vertical relationships in France. And this is really cool because I've been talking about vertical and horizontal relationships since 1999 in technology conferences, and explaining how there are human-human relationships, there are computer-computer relationships, and there are human-computer relationships called human-computer interaction, right? And so this is really kind of cool that we've been having these ideas in parallel in different ways. And so this encounter of the past couple of weeks during the months of September, October, November of 2022 have shown another angle of your book that I hadn't thought about. Because in your book on page 125, you mention about the case where there might be a complaint, a customer might complain, like I'm complaining, but I was calling out a director of what he was doing. I wasn't complaining through a system. I was putting on YouTube, right? And on LinkedIn with 10,000 contacts on LinkedIn and 41,000 viewing hours on YouTube. That's kind of like the social media king, right? Messing with the wrong person. So I called him out. But what you say in your book on page 2025 is more about, the downward spiral of how a employer will support an employee during a customer complaint, because Employer will have to deal with that employee for the rest of their career, right? And can't fire them. Whereas the customer's kind of a one-off kind of situation. You might never see the customer again, but you're going to have to deal with your employee all the time. Then you can't fire them, right? You can't get rid of them. It's really hard to get rid of employees. Heavy, labor laws are extremely protective of employees in France. But then this employee said to me, this restaurant, you can't do this because of COVID, and our director, he turned it into a franchise, he invested money, and he protected us, and he kept our jobs, and now you as a customer, you're gonna cause us to, you know, go on unemployment because if the restaurant shuts down because you called him out. Now the employee said it was a personal thing between me and the director, right? But the fact I put the logo, I actually showed the name of the restaurant. I said what town it's in, right? The zip code. That made them look bad, and that this was not. I was supposed to do that. I wasn't supposed to do this because it would cause them to shut down and they would lose their jobs. Really interesting. So this is the opposite direction that you see on page 125 of your book, because it's the employee actually protecting the employer, which is keeping their job security, right? And we know the job security thing is talked about in the book. So I started reading again, looking for more, doing some little search. I'm an engineer, so I searched the word employer and stuff on that in the book. And I page 123, I found the other thing about the verticality aspects. It's basically page 123, 124, and 125. I found other things that you'd mentioned, but then I actually found on a couple other sections of the book. Let's see, I found them in page 90. I found some stuff about, I think this is where you talk about the page 90, we talk about the symbiotic relationship between the employer and the employee, which you have in France, but you don't have this in America, the US. Really interesting. And this is another proof, a case in point about this, right? So, and it's all about protection, right? Job security and employee protection. Whereas, and these are people, these are essential jobs, right? Employees in a restaurant. And I'm a privileged person not to be in that situation. But I also have a job where I can change jobs all the time. I've changed jobs throughout my career for 40 years. I can do a lot of different things. I'm employable all the time, right? In anything. But this employees here who are in the restaurant, this is the only thing they can do, right? And that person's 50 years old that was complaining to me because that person said that she's going to lose her job. She's going to lose her job and blaming me that she's going to lose her job. Well, it sounds like it's the only job she can do, right? And she can't think about maybe finding another job at another restaurant, right? And I'm not trying to say I'm better. I'm just saying that I think the fact that I'm American and the fact that I've made it so that I don't get attached to my job, which you talk about in the book, the Americans do. We don't attach ourselves to jobs, right? We don't attach ourselves to employers. We don't have this loyalty thing that is so ingrained that we'll do everything to keep our job, right? I don't care because I know I can get another job, right? But some people, a lot in France, French people in general, and the people that are in jobs that are essential jobs, that they're so scared of losing their job, will be loyal to their boss and to their organization more than trying to have loyal customers, right? Really interesting. So, so I want to thank you again, Pascal Baudry, for some really good information in your book. French and Americans, The Other Shores, the English version. There weren't all the chapters weren't at least translated in 2005. Maybe they are now. But the French version being Foncier Américain, L'Autre Rive. Sorry for my bad Halloween sounding voice right now, right? Because I'm coming out of bronchitis. But you really had some really great things to say on those pages, page 90 and pages 123 to 125. And that it looked like 126 to 127. I'll have some other things too about this relationship of, how the employee of an organization will crush or oppress customers in this kind of medieval kind of structure, vertical structure of power. And I mentioned more about power in my other in another book. Actually, in these books about power, because power struggle and all the aspects of high vertical nature of vertical versus horizontal kind of power. I mentioned these cross cultural books as well, and my working with series, right? But your book is great, and I'm coming back to it again, looking up some more stuff in it, and finding more info that I seem to have missed before. So just want to thank you again for shedding some light on it. It's always great, and glad to be citing it again as I continue to talk more about different cultures and how we're all struggling. And I did one about Americans too. Go to my YouTube channel, Jeff Allen France, and they're all up there in the cross cultural section, the playlist, the section playlist. There's a bunch of playlists, and one of them is working with the French, and then working with the Germans, and working with the Chinese, and all that. And I have one called Understanding and Working with Americans, and that reveals a lot of stuff. So if you like that, and thanks again for reading my article 15 years ago. 15 issues ago, probably 16, but and that inspiring me to continue to talk about different cultures and how to help different cultures work together because their value systems are different. So thanks again, and I'll go ahead and tag you on this video. Maybe send the email with the links to the things. I'll put this video somewhere in the playlist in the right place where it seems to fit. Thanks again.